Welcome, everybody, back to another episode. Today, we have Frank Giambrone from Drake Excavating. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so we are going to talk about, obviously excavating, but more importantly, we're going to talk about septic systems, how they work, what's the process look like, when do you get involved, whether it's for a buyer or a seller, and what that process looks like, and some things that you can fix prior to putting a home on the market, or fixing a situation where the septic report comes back and it's unsatisfactory system, and some of the things that you can do to help improve that process. So
Before we get to all that stuff, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about who you are, what you guys do, and how you can help people in our industry.
definitely. So, first off, thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate the time, and my goal with this conversation is nothing other than to help educate people in an area that they don't deal with every day, whether they're the real estate agent that's working with multiple buyers at the same time and sellers that put the pressure on them. I want to make sure that we can be a resource to them. So, like Jay mentioned there, my name's Frank Giambrone. I'm with Drake's Excavating, Landscaping and Excavating. We primarily focus in the northwestern region of New Jersey, but we do travel all over the place. Um, Most of the time we end up coming into a deal for a septic repair, whether it's a simple repair after a report has been generated on the system, or we get brought in preemptively during the sales cycle where a sales consultant, real estate agent says to the buyer, "Look, let's figure out what's wrong with the system before." That way, it's a simple transition from either we have a plan on how we're going to fix it, or it's already been fixed.
mhm.
So there's a lot of different steps on what goes into it, and we can dive into each one of those, but that's pretty much a synopsis of what we offer. So full service of inspecting the septic system, figure out what's going on with it. We use a third party agency just to keep the objectivity of that.
Right.
And then we can consult on exactly how to repair and bring in the right people.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's start with a seller. So for instance, you get a phone call saying, "Hey, we're going to be putting this property on the market soon. Can you come out and take a look at the property and look at the system and tell us what's going on?" So when that happens, what do you do?
So first step is to have that full inspection done. So we excavate, whether it's by hand or with a machine, depending on how deep the components are, all the components of the system. So as you know, there's multiple different types, but let's just say your conventional septic system with a tank and a disposal area. We're going to dig up the tank and make sure that it has everything that meets current codes. From there we work out to the field, confirm that all the water's making it there first off by putting cameras inside the lines, inspecting each line for sags, any buildup of material that has been created over time, as well as getting into the D box and confirming that it's level, it's flowing water properly, and it's doing its job to its fullest extent.
Mhm.
From there, we uncover the D box, confirm that all the laterals are taking effluent properly, and then put a camera in each one of those and diagnose the health of the field. We then probe the field, make sure that there's no standing water in that stone.
Mhm.
That would consider it a failure and unsatisfactory. So check all the main vital signs of the system to confirm it's good. And on advanced treatment and pump systems, there's other checklists that we hit.
Sure.
A full report is given at the end that goes completely comprehensive into everything. It
Mhm.
talks about the pipes. It talks about anything that isn't satisfactory, that doesn't meet current code and standards.
Gotcha. So let's just say a standard system, right? So you had, which is usually called, like, correct me if I'm wrong, the black water line that comes out of the house.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that black water line, which is like the main sewer line, that would go into a tank. A
Correct.
standard tank is around 1,000 gallons, give or take,
Yep.
depending on, how many bedrooms that house is verified for. So we have the holding tank, and then it would go to the D box. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And just going back real quick, capacity is based off of volume of usage, which in New Jersey is regulated by number of bedrooms.
Okay.
So, a larger bedroom house is going to have a higher capacity tank. Also, there's different regulations per each township. So like specifically Long Valley and Washington, Township, Morris County, they require a 1,500 gallon septic tank on all their properties. So that's, any new construction, they get that right off the bat.
Yeah.
So that's just regulations, within each individual township.
Right. It used to be so 1,000 gallons would be a standard 4-bedroom at one point, right?
Correct.
And then every 250 gallon size tank after that would be an additional bedroom at one point.
Yeah, I think this is kind of engineer territory where we bring in the specialists, but they calculate off of bedrooms. I believe it's 250 or maybe it's 350 for the first two.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, the engineer comes up with the calculations, and a 4-bedroom home is typically 1,000 gallon tank. Correct.
Gotcha. And then it goes into the D box, and then the D box is the distribution box, which will then disperse the wastewater into the leach field, which then can have, depending on the size of the leach field, can have multiple lines that's spread out across the span of the property.
Exactly. So the way I describe it simply is the way you plug in, the splitter for your outlets. The D box is that splitter box where multiple come from one. So that one line comes in and distributes all those, all the water and effluent into the field to allow it to disperse evenly into the ground in that area to not only treat, but then dispose of the wastewater back into the ground. Mm-hmm. So the whole process is made to slowly let that water go through, filter out any contaminants, and return it back to a state that's acceptable to go down into groundwater.
Gotcha. Do you guys also do, like, for instance, if there is, say it's an older property and there is a sewer main in the street, would you excavate to possibly have that house hooked up to the sewer main as well? Would you do something?
Yeah, for sure. So there's, different regulations and working in different towns, but we are certified to do exactly that. So we can run to a riser that's on this curb and, tie into a sewer line.
Mm-hmm. What have you seen over the past couple of years of is there any significant changes that have taken place to septic systems to, bring up to code? Like what would you say are some of the major changes over the last couple of years?
It really comes down to the basic stuff. Like they want to make sure everything's safe, right? So a locking lid and riser on a septic tank is huge. We want to make sure that little Johnny's not going to fall down in there and have any issues with that. So
it's always little Johnny,
yeah, always little Johnny. Something with a well, I think.
I thought Timmy fell in the well. I thought Timmy fell.
Either way. But yeah, that's the main thing. I mean, I think they've revised the code pretty heavily in 1996 or 91 in that area, and went over exactly what the specs were for septic systems and how they were designed. But for the most part, there's a bunch of different major types, but depending on what type of property is, we utilize all these different forms to make it work. We're coming into an instance where the builder typically chooses that primary best location that A is most economical and B is simple to build because they're just looking to stick to their budgets. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes we come in and we have to use the advanced treatment units, which there's a number of them that are made for different specific instances, whether it's a high water table condition, restrictive soils that don't allow water to percolate through at the rate that is necessary. In other states, they actually let these advanced treatment systems treat the water to the extent where it's so clean that they then broadcast it with sprinklers over, farm areas and just, grassy areas. So that's how advanced the technology has gotten in the wastewater management, space. But here in New Jersey, we usually end up with some sand and stone in a hole and, reintroduce it back into the ground.
Gotcha. What is an advanced system look like? Is it just depending on the grade of the property, it has to be pumped somewhere, or like what would be an average advanced system look like today?
Right. So if we go back real quick to the gravity standard system that you think of, usually that's the tank that flows gravity from the house right into that tank. From there, a lot of treatment occurs. The solids settle out to the bottom of the tank, and any water comes in. Or any water flows out. So if 1 gallon comes into the tank, 1 gallon goes out to the distribution area. From there, it goes into the D box where it filters back into the ground. That's your conventional, gravity system. And there's a sand filter that's built into the ground with a certain layer of sand designed specifically to what's in the ground as the native soil, and then a stone bed above that. So when we get into a pumping system, it's where we can't get gravity pitch from a septic tank to a field. So then we add a secondary tank, which then has, a certain amount of capacity for any power outages that might occur. So if the power does go out, it still has room to raise up and not end up backing up into the house. So from there, it would then electrically pump the water out to that septic field. There's a couple advantages to that. It allows the engineer to reduce the size of the field overall. So even though sometimes you might not need to pump and pressure dose a field, it affords the engineer the ability to make the field smaller. So they get a square footage reduction on the surface area of that field. So sometimes you might not need to pump because of gravity, but it helps with a small lot that really doesn't have the room to fit a conventional, septic system. So there's that. And then we run into the ATUs, where advanced treatment system, there's a number of them on the market. But mainly the whole goal is that whether we're close to wells, we're close to a water course or a stream, C1 waterway right here in Blairstown, we have the Paulins Kill. So we run into that a lot. And in those instances, the ATUs refine that effluent, which is the water that comes out of a septic tank, further, so that it's further along in the process. We need to get them, we need to get that water down to a point where it's safe, and these treatment systems do it quicker. So again, we get afforded another savings in the field area. With these ATUs, you get a maintenance agreement that needs to be maintained, so the state knows that everything is still kosher and good to go, and being maintained properly. So the advanced treatment system is mainly for marginal lots that are difficult to build on, and we need to get a septic in for whatever reason it is.
Hey, Frank, now I'm going to get to one of the dirty questions of this, right?
Yep.
The cost, right? Like there's so many people that move into our area that have never heard of a septic. They don't know what it entails. They don't know how much it's going to be to maintain. I know costs vary, but can you give like an estimate or a range of like, what would it cost like for a brand new system today? We'll say from like a 3-bedroom on up, like, and what's that range look like?
So it depends. Like a lot of times with real estate transactions, we can get away with a simple repair. So there's two ways to go about this. And I actually thought of it this morning when I was thinking about what we were talking about here. I'm going to put together a nice little flow chart for everybody that goes through from a report, pass, fail, what's next. And whether that's for the real estate agent, the person buying a home, that way they can understand exactly what the process is, and they know what they're getting into, because septic is something that people get afraid of right off the bat. They hear, oh, septic, I'm going to spend 60 grand on my, new system that I'm never going to see, but I can use my shower and bathroom. So the main thing, with that, and I'll put that together for you and send it out so you can get it to everybody. But pretty much on budgeting purposes, if we can repair it, sometimes we have $1,000 repairs where it's a simple lid and riser. We get a couple permits. Usually takes us about a week to get those permits approved and a day to do the job. Very straightforward. We then jump into, adding, let's say the field has failed, but the tanks are so good. We can then put a field in. We've done them from $15,000 all the way up to, let's say, $25,000 or $30,000. And it really depends on soil type. So if somebody says, oh, this is what this is going to cost, if we need to put in a new field, we need engineered plans, and that's going to be regulating what the cost is. So from there, we're looking at
field's the most expensive part of the system.
For the most part, yeah, definitely. So from there, we would then get into a fully engineered system that we have to add a new tank, new lines, everything complete. Engineering side of things, usually around the $5,000 mark. We need a survey. We need a few other things that go in with that, with the permits and the applications. But you're looking somewhere between, for a 4-bedroom home, $30,000 to $40,000 is realistic for a complete septic system with design.
Gotcha. Now, are there any circumstances today that say the property size doesn't warrant a full system because there's just no room for a leach field, where there would be like, a seepage pit instead of, can you still do seepage pits in the state?
Yeah, so that's a very key term you use there. So seepage pit is different than what's commonly known as a cesspool.
Yep.
So a cesspool would be no tank prior to this distribution area. So um, one line comes from the house, everything ends up in a hole that allows water and solids and everything to percolate down into the ground. That's currently illegal in New Jersey. But a seepage pit, where you would put a tank prior to that, and in most cases, we utilize advanced treatment systems before this. You see it a lot in Opakong, Jefferson, Sparta, where there's a lot of rock, rock and high water tables. We'll run into where we'll put in a pit because we physically can't get down deep enough to do deep enough or wide enough to do a traditional septic field disposal area. So yeah, 100% commonplace to use those.
Okay. Yeah. Also, sometimes there are, like I said, depending on the property, there are certain manhole covers that are, say, driveway rated and not driveway rated. Do you find that sometimes that you have to, change the risers and the manhole covers and make them driveway rated on some properties?
Yep, that happens pretty frequently. So we actually just did a job not too long ago where the septic was designed to be traffic rated, and basically it's additionally, shored up lids and covers and walls on the tank so that traffic can travel over it. But they're stupid expensive. You got to custom order it, time to get it done, and that's our biggest thing, right? Like especially real estate transactions, you're looking at time kills all deals, the old saying. So we want to make sure we can get in there, build a system that's going to work. B, meet all state regulations. So with these traffic rated tanks, sometimes we can shift them to the side and get them out of traffic and save the customer, big money at the end of the day by just running the pipe a little further. We end up sleeving it under the driveway and we're good to go. So definitely instances where you need it in a parking lot, but if we can avoid it, we do.
Right.
Interesting. So there are some circumstances when, a repair gets past the limit where you can do, without a engineer. And then there are certain circumstances when the system is far too gone and the whole thing needs replaced. And that's when you mentioned like you would have to get an engineer with a survey to figure out where it's going to be best fit on the property. And then when that happens, the engineer will come out, with you guys, and excavate, and do what would be called a perk test. Is that correct?
Yeah, soil logs are a perk test, and that's the first start of the process. So let's say you have a failed report on a property and you need to get it fixed so that the mortgage company will put a mortgage on the property for the sale. Step one is contracting an engineer. So we go out there. Usually the survey is done first, just so we know where property boundaries are. There's limits and certain setbacks, not only off of property lines, but also neighboring wells. So we have to respect all those things. And a survey is really helpful in that, journey through there. So we go out, we excavate 2 10-foot soil logs. This allows us to look at and examine the material, not specifically us, but the engineer. So he's in there looking at the material. They have a whole big book that they look at the color, the texture, the makeup of it. And basically what they're looking for is a good permeable layer that is going to accept the water that we're going to put in there and then also treat it. So if we can't find that stuff with the engineer, we end up designing a system or this sand filter that will then, replace what's there. So we excavate out, the area once the system's designed, and pretty much that's where the design comes from 100%. They look at the material and they design to it. Mm-hmm. So once that design is built, we then build to the plan. So they put in exactly how much material that we need. We excavate out the virgin material and put in the certified sand.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the materials? I've heard that the materials have really gone up in price over the last couple of years. What is it about the materials that have gone, reason why they've gone up in price? So
yeah, I think trucking has to do a lot with it, right? So not only are these trucks paying higher rates in fuel, but they've been charging fuel surcharges for a while now. So I don't see those going away, but The manufacturing of it, the process is all very, petrol, as dependent. So it really depends a lot on fuel. So they have to mine it, they have to get it, and then they have to wash it. So it has to be a certain spec. They want it to be a certain size so that the water flows through it at a certain rate and has the ample time to clean it. Without that, it's you can't have it. It has to be that certain spec. So the cost of getting it there, the cost of making it and washing it. And I think there's just a reduction in the amount of companies that are doing it. There's only a certain amount of quarries in our area that are currently making this product, and they charge what they want for it.
Supply and demand.
Yep.
Just like real estate right now.
So
exactly.
So it would be, so say the PVC pipes in the leach field, right? And then so the first layer would be sand.
So starting from the bottom up, we have a layer of sand, which is our zone of treatment and our zone of disposal. It needs to be, whether it's native or it's imported, it needs to be 4 feet of treatment and 4 feet of disposal. On top of that, we have a foot of stone, which is, it can be 3/4, but not a lot of the quarries around here make it at 3/4. So the spec is 1.5 to 3.5 stone. And that's also washed. So they get all the particulate off of it. It's really clean. That way it doesn't plug up. Everybody's seen a puddle in their yard, how, when it rains really heavy, the puddle is clean and then it gets murky. From there, when the puddle goes away, you see that fine layer of silt. And that really plugs up, most of that surface area. So that's what they want to avoid in these septic fields. We want to make sure that they don't silt up and they don't get plugged up with, that organic silty stuff. So from that stone, our pipe sits on top of there, and that's where is the level of infiltration, is what they call it, where the water meets, this filtering, system.
Gotcha. How on average, how long do you think a septic system in New Jersey in our environment usually lasts?
Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question there, because it really goes back to usage.
Yeah,
it goes back to usage on the whole thing. So just like if you abuse your car, your car's not going to last the 150,000 miles you expect to see out of a good car. So it's just like anything. If you take care of it, they say whatever you put in your body is what goes into your septic, nothing else. So paint thinners are big to keep out of there. Washing out your paint brushes, any of the other stuff that is toxic and will kill good bacteria, because that's the whole goal. The ecology of what's going on in your septic tank is what does the treatment. So if it's healthier inside that septic tank to eat up those particulate and send out a better product to the field, it's going to last longer. So they say 20 to 30 years is expected out of a new system that we're building nowadays. But we've seen them burn up with misuse in 10 years, not even less than that. So it really comes down to usage and how much water is going into it.
No, Frank, what is the general maintenance of a septic system? Because that's one of the most common questions. You kind of hit on it, like what goes in your body goes into it, and that's it. But what, in addition to that, what else is there additives you put in there to help with that bacteria? Is there, pumping out? How often do you recommend doing that? Is dependent on the size. Can you touch on some of those things?
Yeah, so I think it depends who you talk to about the additives. I think that a lot of people, they feel comfortable putting that in there, but does it really affect it? I can't tell you whether it helps 100% or not. There's different aeration units that are now coming to the market in New Jersey that will eat up the solids quicker and the sludge and create a better environment. Basically, it's an aerobic process that creates more ecology in there that eats up the particulate. So that's beneficial, I think, for sure, if you can get an aeration unit in there. But for the most part, every 3 years, and it's funny you touch that, because a lot of people are like, well, I have a septic, but I don't know. The guy comes out every once in a while. 3 years for your 4-person family is realistic on a 1,000-gallon tank. And they come out, pump it, pretty straightforward, a few $100s, and you're back in business.
All right.
Should you use gold leaf toilet paper?
I think probably not. A big thing is the wipes. The wet wipes are terrible for it. So on the septic tank, there's actually they call them baffles, an inlet baffle and an outlet baffle. And the whole goal of those are to direct solids down to the bottom and keep the liquids at the top. And just like we talked about the ecology, there's different layers in that tank that do different things to the material that's in there. So at the top, you get a scum layer. Down below, you get the sludge that collects. And in between, there's a lot of different living organisms. So if every time you flush a toilet, if you don't have a baffle, it really disturbs and disrupts those. So, a certain type of bacteria that likes to live in one area gets disrupted and might die. So having those proper baffles and making sure that they're clean and working properly is pretty critical. And that's part of the inspection when we look at, septic systems, is making sure baffles are intact and everything's how it's supposed to be.
I've seen screens put in over the years. Have you seen that as well, to kind of like,
some type of filter, right?
yeah, just to so the outlet baffle that would go into the field or the D box, it kind of just, if something didn't settle yet in the tank, it doesn't accidentally get pushed into the D box and go downstream kind of situation.
Exactly.
Yep. And I've seen homeowners like, all right, every 6 months, just pull that screen out and hose it off, so it is continuously, collecting and doing its job as well.
Yeah, that's a nice defense to put on there, and that's actually standards on all the new systems we put in, is having a filter on the outlet baffle side. So that filter, like you said, we make it really simple with a manhole cover. You go in there. It's recommended every 3 months to get in there, pull it out, and hose it off. So a lot of the current filters are simple. You literally don't have to touch anything. We put a nice T-handle on top when we install it. You pull it out and hose it off with your garden hose and put it right back in.
Dip it in the pool, clean it off.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's what you're into.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. So you can't, obviously you can't put and on the leach field, you don't want to drive on the leach field. You don't want to put a pool on the leach field. Like, you want to basically protect that leach field at all costs when it's on the property, correct?
Yeah. So usually what you'll see on any new systems that we put in, and most of them have it, unless the homeowner had a nice joyride on their lawnmower, but every corner has what's called an inspection port. And that allows inspectors to, probe down in there and look and see if there's any high water conditions. So it goes right down to the top of the sand, through the stone, is perforated, so it will let water in if there is water there. But you want to keep anything heavy off your leach field. Cars, the ground pressure on our machines that we use, and a lot of times you get homeowners that see you backfilling a septic that we just installed, and they saw the plastic pipe. Like, it's not crazy heavy duty, but the stone protects it a lot. And the machines that we use are all designed with a certain ground pressure that is safe to drive over those fields. So the minimum amount of coverage you're allowed on a septic field is 9 inches. So the minimum amount it can be is 9 inches of topsoil and fill dirt above the stone and fabric that we have there. And the maximum is 18. So it's surprising, but a lot of evaporation actually occurs on a septic field. So not only is the water going down, but a fair amount of it does travel out the top. So you might run into a condition where you see a septic field that's really deep, and it might fail premature because it has too much coverage on it and it can't work properly. So it's a wild concept, but definitely happens.
Right. You mentioned before, like, aeration, like, to like save, would that be to save a leach field or kind of rejuvenate it? Can you touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So in New Jersey, it falls under the advanced treatment systems, the aeration systems, and there's a number of different ones that use aeration versus cleansing it through. There's one that uses coconut husks. It literally filters down by letting it fall through that husk and then pumps it out to the field. But the aeration just promotes a healthy environment in the tank. So in other states, I don't know if this is commonplace in New Jersey yet, but they will take on a field that is creating a biomat or having some type of failure showing. They will put aeration systems in it and have it actually rejuvenate the field. I think in New Jersey, it's still kind of like taboo, and they don't like that stuff. But out in Michigan, out that way, they use this stuff all the time to fix fields that are failing and turn them around completely.
Gotcha.
Incredible.
Interesting. And so not only are you dealing, say just with the state alone in New Jersey, but also you have to, each town or each county's health department also could be different, correct?
Yeah, so it really depends on, the town and specifically. So Warren County is regulated by all, Warren County Health Department. They handle everything through their office. There's a number of different townships, Denville, Rockaway, Mount Olive has their own health department. So it's specific in each area. That's one thing you want to confirm that, your septic contractor is certified in your town to work. So there's tests that need to be taken, license that need to be maintained. And some towns do require bonding to work in their towns. So, making sure that you have an approved contractor from that list is definitely valuable.
Frank, is there anything else you want to really touch on that we didn't hit on? Like any topic that you think is important for real estate professionals or customers, to understand about these systems?
Yeah, the main thing is just doing your homework. My goal I can tell you, I'm sure a lot of real estate agents feel this way too, is where we spend a lot of time educating people on different topics. And this is something we deal with every day. We see all these different types of systems from start to finish, and we know different problems that occur with each one. So just being a resource, right? So learning what could be wrong, why it could be wrong. It could be a very simple fix where somebody might have missed it. That would be the biggest portion for me, I think, is making a seamless process for everybody involved. It's a scary time when somebody says your septic's bad. You might be thinking you're on the hook for all this money, but it could just be a simple repair. So, my goal is working with people and making sure that they know what all the possibilities are and coming up with a good solution that's simple for everybody.
Awesome. Now, in addition to septics, because obviously that's the topic of the day, but what else do you guys do just to give people an idea?
Yeah, for sure. So my business partner and I, Greg, he runs all our landscaping stuff. We have a number of full-time guys that we do maintenance on properties. We cut grass all over, northern New Jersey. We do patios, walkways, retaining walls. The way we like to put it is we're one-stop shop, right? Like we can take a wooded piece of property, clear it all. We do forestry mulching, land clearing, foundation excavation, all utility hookups and digging for that. And then also final grading and installing your lawn. We take pride in what we leave, and there's a lot of guys out there that kind of just get the job done, and especially in septic, it's a utility. So as long as it works, everybody's happy, right? But we don't want real estate agents running out at the 11th hour of a deal and literally throwing seed in yards because the deal's going to fall through. So my goal is to come in, make it work perfectly for everybody, and leave it better than what we came to. So awesome. That's the goal.
What's the best way to contact you guys?
We have a pretty good social media platform of Instagram and Facebook. We keep updates on that, on what we have going on. So you can choose a direct message there. We're working on our website right now, just getting that all revised. But our phone number is posted all over those websites. So more than happy to get in touch with you.
Yeah, we'll link those here.
Yeah, we'll link those. And you also said you're going to put together like a flow chart.
Yeah, definitely. I have it all written out, but you don't want to see the copy I have. So I'll get our marketing girl on it and get it all dialed in. So I'll send that out to you. That way you have a link for it, PDF.
Yeah, stick figures and crayon.
Stick figures and crayon.
Yeah, you don't want this.
That's funny.
That's awesome, Frank. Well, thank you so much for your time today, man. We appreciate everything you do, and we'd love to have you back again sometime.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the time.
All right, man. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.